Our country is now providing all these services. Social, economic, and the Islamic Emirate decided to declare the names the ministers and the officials of the other departments will be. Now we can declare the name of the Prime Minister and his aide. They will be declared.
محترم الحاج ملا محمد حسن اخوند سرپرست ریاست الوزراء محترم
Mr. Mullah Muhammad Hassan, acting Prime Minister.
محترم مولوی محمد یعقوب مجاهد
Deputy Muhammad Mujahid
محترم الحاج ملا سراجی محترمی سرپرست وزارت داخله
Mr. Siraj Hassani is acting Interior Minister.
محترم ملا هدایت الله بدری
This is the acting Foreign Minister. Hello.
شیخ مولوی نور الله منیر
Hidayah Badri is the Internal Minister, acting Internal Minister.
ملا خیرالله خیرخواه سرپرست وزارت اطلاعات و فرهنگ محترم قاری دین محمد حنیف سرپرست وزارت اقتصاد
Munakhir Lakika is the Minister of Mines, acting Minister of.
محترم مولوی عبدالحکیم شرعی سرپرست وزارت
Nur Muhammad Saqib is the acting Minister
محترم
of Endowment and Mortmain.
سرپرست وزارت سرحدات و قبایل
Abdul Hakim Azab is acting.
محترم ملا محمد یونس اخونزاده سرپرست وزارت انکشاف دهات محترم
Nurullah is the Minister.
سرپرست وزارت دعوت و ارشاد امر بالمعروف و
Nurullah Akhundzada
محترم ملا عبدالمنان عمری
is the
سرپرست
Hajj
وزارت فواید
and
عامه
Guidance Minister.
محترم حاجی ملا محمد عیسی اخوند سرپرست وزارت معادن و پترولیم
Abdul Anan
محترم ملا
is the
عبداللطیف منصور
Development
سرپرست
Minister.
وزارت آب و برق
Act
محترم
Nurullah
ملا
Akhun,
حمیدالله اخونزاده
Minister
سرپرست
of
وزارت هوانوردی و
Petrol.
ترانسپورت محترم مولوی
Abdul Latif is the
عبدالباقی
Minister of
حقانی
Electricity
سرپرست
and
وزارت
Energy.
تحصیلات عالی محترم مولوی نجیب الله حقانی سرپرست وزارت مخابرات
Mulawi Abdul Hakami is the Higher Education Minister.
سرپرست وزارت مهاجرین محترم ملا عبدالحق وسیق سرپرست ریاست عمومی استخبارات
Khalil Haqqani is the Minister of Immigration and Refugees.
محترم
Abdul Haq Wakiz is the acting Intelligence Minister.
محترم ملا محمد فاضل اخوند معین وزارت دفاع
Muhammad Jan Ahmadi is the head of the
شیر محمد عباس
Prime Minister's Office,
وزارت خارجه محترم
acting
نور جلال معین
Head of
وزارت
Army Sheikh Muhammad Abdul.
محترم زبیح الله مجاهد معین وزارت اطلاعات و فرهنگ محترم ملا تاجمیر جواد معاون نخست ریاست عمومی استخبارات محترم ملا رحمت الله نجیب معاون اداری ریاست عمومی استخبارات و محترم ملا عبدالحق معین وزارت داخله در بخش مبارزه با مواد مخدر امارت اسلامی افغانستان څرنګه چې موږ تاسو شاهدان یو هیواد د بحراني حالت سره مخ وو.
All right, so you've just been listening there to Zabihullah Mujahid, the Taliban spokesperson. They're naming officials to the naming new ministers that will form the Taliban government, named a number of ministries there. I understand we have some English translation back now, so we'll go back and listen in.
ریاست الوزراء دو معاونان دي محترم ملا عبدالغنی برادر اخوند د ریاست الوزراء یو معاون محترم مولوی عبدالسلام حنفی
simple problem.
ریاست الوزراء دو معاون نو مشرتابه و پتیاله چې د اسلامي امارت
Mulawi is the
یو سرپرسته
vice prime minister and Hanafi is the second vice prime minister. The rest of the ministries will be declared in future. We are trying until we get the right meritorious cadre to fill in the positions in the rest of the ministries. We will speak in future on these subjects. In due course, we will declare the other ministries. We have declared the ministries that we were in pressing need for them. And until we get into a more stable situation, we will be acting accurately and speedily to have the future administration in place, God willing. We do have clear policy. We have our policy, a clear policy, God willing, and the next, the other ministers will be declared later on. And finally, we praise God. Now I can answer questions of the brothers journalists. Are there no journalists? No press? France press?
Would like to know there was some protest this afternoon this morning and this afternoon in Kabul and Herat. According to some reports, there were some journalists who were beaten or arrested during this protest. So we'd like to know what would you confirm on that, this arrest, and why they were arrested. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. ترجمان لري دوی؟
سلام، ایشان از EFP هستن. هم تو معرفی کردن گفتن پیش از 6 تا بعد از 6 برخی تظاهرات ها در کابل و هرات بوده که گفتم میشه بعضی از ژورنالیست‌ها و کسایی که مظاهره میکردن مورد لطکوب قرار گرفتن و بعضیشون هم بازداشت شدن. آیا شما مورد تایید میکنن؟
Taliban did not deal with them in an appropriate manner and they beaten them up. We have to understand that these days we have come out from an emergency situation and the atmosphere is not the right one and suitable for demonstrations. Any demonstrations, with the knowledge of the Ministry of Justice and the competent authorities. So, in order to deal with the demonstrations, we have to know in advance. But unfortunately, brothers do make these demonstrations in an ad hoc manner and indiscriminate fashion, which violates the security and the public order. Therefore, they cause security issues in the capital. I do ask the demonstrators not to make any demonstration in these days, so that not to disturb the public. And Abdelhak Omari from
دغه کابینه آیا دا به د لنډمهال لپاره وي که د دایمي لپاره او بل دا چې د امیرالمؤمنین په دغه وخت کې دغه موقف څه دی؟
یو خبره خدا چې امیرالمؤمنین به ان شاء الله د امیر په شکل باندې هغه مطرح وي او دا کابینه هغه اعلان کړه. ریاست الوزرا یا هغه موقف د صدر اعظمي لري، صدر اعظم او خپل کابینه اعلان کوي استخدام یې کار ته. او بل دا چې تر اوسه پورې دا سرپرسته ده، په دې معنی چې دا لنډمهالي وخت لپاره به رسیدګي کوي امورو ته، وروسته بیا په دې کابینه کې لا ډېر قوت راوستلی سو، لا ډېر اصلاحات راوستلی سو، لا ډېر ترمیمات.
Okay, so you've been listening there to Zabihullah Mujahid, the Taliban spokesman, addressing the media there. Earlier, he had announced the names of a number of new ministers to head up what will form the new Taliban government, something that people have been waiting for several days now. And I understand we have English translation. No, we don't. So he then took some questions from journalists and was asked about the protests that have been taking place in recent days, in which this Tuesday, in fact, Taliban fighters were seen firing shots into the air to disperse hundreds of people. We're going to go back now to the presser because we have translation, English translation.
Not permanent ones, but in future this will happen. We will, of course, in future appoint people in a fundamental and permanent fashion. Then the ministers will be acting within the law and the legal framework.
تشکر مجاهد صاحب. من محمد اسلام بینوش هستم، خبرنگار تلویزیون تمدن
TV.
کابینه سرپرستی که از طرف شما
My name is
شد
Mohammed
امروز
Islam
با وجودی
Binosh.
که دعاهای همه شمول صورت میگرفت و مطرح میشد، از همه
As you
شمول
have
بودن از او خبری نیست.
declared today,
از اقوام مختلف دو عضویت ندارد.
we thought the government would be a complete
مطالبات جامعه اهل تشیع که تاکنون
government, but what
از مجرای شورای علمای شیعه افغانستان مطرح شده، از طالبات دیدگاه شما چی است؟
what are the parties and what are the
در رابطه به مطالبات چی است؟ سوال
requirements
مجاهد صاحبی است که شما شاهد هستین که
for
اعتراضات در روزهای گذشته بوده و
the people that will be selected for the jobs, as you
فکر میکنین که برخورد نظامیان
declared.
معترضین
We've also witnessed demonstrations in the capital and in Haraz and other surrounding provinces. Some people feel there is interference from Pakistan in the internal affairs. Thank you. Firstly, as you said, the government we announced is an acting government. It is not the future and permanent government. Some of the ministers have not been declared yet, which we will do soon.
ولی دائمی نیست، تلاش میشه که بهبود پیدا بکنه و همه شمولتر شود.
However, the declaration of government, this declaration is not final. These are acting ministers. I don't say they're not deserving, but at this stage we are in a emergency stage, and people are talking about the Panjshir, but we tell you the Panjshir province is safe. There has been no exchanges and there has been no war in the wilaya of Panjshir. There are also people that carrying out demonstrations. We do know they don't want security and safety in the capital. We also know some people do not have enough experience to deal with demonstrators, and I would like and hope that this is left for the future so that it can be dealt with properly within a full-time government. And now we do not allow people to use the current situation in order to cause trouble. The interference of Pakistan is a rumor that it has been bandied about for 20 years. We do not allow interference. We act with complete freedom, and we were able to fight the countries of the world who were occupying our country. From the outset, we fought the whole world for the sake of Islam and this country. God forbid they want to drive a wedge between us and Pakistan. We have sacrificed and provided many sacrifices in defense of this country and the people of this country. You declare a government to the people who were waiting for this declaration of government. The fundamental issue is that some controversy in the media saying that if some of those people are known faces and familiar faces who are in the government, then it would be a government that is shared by everybody. Other than that, the government will not be sharing the power. Look, we need to be able to defend our country, and we have been fighting in Kandahar, and we are not a tribal force, and we're not from one tribe, for example. We do have people from all different ethnicities and from different backgrounds, so we are diverse. Praise be to God, and we are proud that we have joined by everybody, yes, not from the Pashtun, but some of the people you mentioned were talking about different issues for 20 years and talking about personal interests. we do not allow people to speak on behalf of, turn it into a tribal thing. We wanted a comprehensive and fully functioning government. For example, everybody is a representative of this country, and thank God we don't have any problem with the Panjshir Wilaya. We do have lots of resources, but generally speaking, the Panjshirs are said to be the poor ones. However, some people live in caves and others have been participating in previous government who had great wealth. So where were you from these people?
Kabul News.
سلام مجاهد صاحب وخت مو بخیر مجاهد صاحب لکه څنګه چې تاسو خبر یاست نن
Peace be upon you, Mr. Mujahid. You do know that in many wilayas that there are demonstrations, and the way Taliban is dealing with the demonstrators is harsh, and they have been beating us up and breaking our tools and equipment. If they continue dealing with the demonstrators in this fashion, so what would be the result in the future? Today, we heard that some people came to Mazar Sharif. As you said in the beginning, that these days you do not allow demonstrators from Pashtun because these people do not need security and stability in the country. We don't want war in Panjshir. So we say any exchanges or battles in Afghanistan, I tell them, those from Panjshir, bring back the weapons you took, because this is from the Bayt al-Mal that belongs to the state. Those civilian people have to make sure that we are in a situation that is very critical, and we hope that the press raise their voice, but in a proper manner. So some of our people do not have enough experience to be able to deal properly with the demonstrators. And as I have said, and I say again, this period of time, we cannot allow demonstrations. I am Shafiq Ahmed from Anadolu. My question is how do you think how many countries of the world will support and recognize you? For example, do all Islamic countries recognize your legitimacy? Firstly, there are international relations, and we want good relations with all countries of the world. Americans were engaged in a war and they occupied our country. However, we still want bilateral relationships with the government, and we declared to all the world that we do not allow any country to interfere in our affairs. This is, in this country, we do our work and we are responsible, and we do not wish any interference in our work and interference in our governments. And we do not allow and do not accept that either. We do not interfere in any other country's affairs, and we do not allow and accept anyone to interfere in our affairs now or in the future. And we hope that all countries of the world to recognize the legitimacy of our country and the legitimacy of our Islamic regime, and nobody would be able to allow to abuse our country. Thank you, Mr. Mujahid. The ministers of the forthcoming ministers, this situation, as I mentioned, our relationship is good with all countries of the world. We have good relationships and positive relationships. Now we have been preoccupied with the Panjshir problem because they came to Kabul and came to Afghanistan, and we hope that countries of the world begin to have good relationship with the Islamic State of Afghanistan. Thank you, Mr. Mujahid. You have announced the government, but when are you going to announce the forthcoming government, and how and why did you stop flights to other countries in Afghanistan? Because the persons who want to leave Afghanistan, diplomatic or other personnel, must have the right documents in order, and they have to go through the exit gate and the entry gate. As we have announced through the ministries that we will be dealing with the problems of flights as of tomorrow. Mr. Mujahid would like to know about women's rights. What is the future of women? Some of the ministries we have not announced, and we will announce that we'll be dealing with this matter, which is a women's right.
Now, you were listening to Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid announcing the formation of a new Afghan government. Now, we were receiving an English translation from Al Jazeera. Now, the news conference comes days after the United States fully withdrew its troops and ended their 20-year war. And the Taliban have so far just announced the names of the government ministers. They include the Education, Interior, Immigration, and Development ministers. Now, let's speak to Professor Wang Jin. He joins me now from Xi'an. He's a specialist in Middle Eastern Studies at China's Northwest University. Now, Professor Wang, thank you for joining us. Now, as you know, the full cabinet will be announced very soon. Now, from what you just heard, to what extent do you think the new administration is capable of offering good governance and meet the demands of Afghan people?
I think I have to say that good luck to the new government, because the formation of the new government is a very positive sign that Afghan Taliban dominated the political power hopes to bring back the stability as well as the peace to Afghanistan. If you look at the names of the very key members of the new cabinet, especially the very important positions such as Prime Minister, the Vice Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, Internal Minister. So all of these very key posts are controlled or are given to the Afghan Taliban seniors or the very high-level members inside Afghan Taliban. That is, I think, that reflects the very reality of the political landscape, because the Taliban forces they control the capital city, so it is very highly necessary for the Afghan Taliban members to get this very important possession, so that can maintain the stability and the security of the city as well as Afghanistan entirely. But there was, as we see, there were still some posts and possessions that will be declared later. So that means that they are still in the process of discussion, negotiations. But no matter how, I think it is a very opportunity for Afghan people to move forward. And that's why I say good luck to the Afghan people under the leadership of Afghan Taliban new government.
Now, Professor Wang, as we know, the new administration will be headed by Mohammad Hassan. Now, the Taliban made it very clear that they do not want any interference from the international community in ruling their country. They also said they hope to build a good relationship with the rest of the world. So once the Taliban forms the new government, how do you think it will tackle the big issues facing Afghanistan?
I think a lot of the very pressing issues that they have to tackle with, for example, they have to handle with refugees, they have to handle with economic worsening situation, they have to handle with how to settle the former government security forces, because they have about 300,000 personnel, so they have to ask them to go back home to hand over the weapons, and also they have to keep the positive relationship with different local power, allies, and also local power forces, and also they have to try to develop ties with regional neighbors as well as international societies. So they have a lot of pressing issues they have to do for the new government. But as I say, that the formation of the new government, announcement of the new government, means that it is the very time that to some extent that Afghanistan ended the anarchic status has been lasted nearly for a month, and it is a very good opportunity for Afghan people to move forward for the future. So on the one hand, they need to unite together to handle with different difficulties, and on the other hand, they have to develop ties with international society to get try to get the assistance and the help from international society to maintain the country's stability and peace back to the order.
The current issue now is evacuations, and Mujahid touched on this. It is estimated that 500,000 Afghans will flee to other countries. Given your expertise, how do you think the new government should deal with them?
I think it is very difficult to settle this refugee problem very immediately or very well in the very short term, because there was just such a big number, and maybe more people are are trying to displace their home and go back to the other places, and maybe many of them want to cross the border to the neighboring countries. So it is, on the one hand, the refugee problem actually influenced not only Afghanistan, but also influenced the neighboring countries such as Iran and Pakistan, and even go to the Turkey, and even many of the refugees want to go to Europe and United States. So it's a very international issue that they need everybody to work hard to find solution for it. And meanwhile, I think the very fundamental solution for this issue that is that the Afghanistan should go back to the stability and go back to the order. So once this country go back to stable, it means that it will make lesser people to go out of their home and leave their home, and that is a very good solution that to persuade people who already left their country to go back. So that is why I think for the new government, if you really want to solve this problem, stability, order, and inclusive authority in the future will be very highly needed for better Afghanistan, for the better economic conditions, for the better social order. That will be very highly necessary for the new government. I think I will say good luck to them.
Now, given today's protests in Kabul and the recent conflict in Panjshir Valley, how do you think the Taliban can maintain the Afghan people's trust and support?
I think it is still a very difficult task, because even what we see on the press just now, there were still questions, someone questioning about whether the Afghan Taliban dominated government or the new government has the capability and the credibility to finish this task. But as we always stress, that it is always a good beginning that the new government will form, and meanwhile they will also have a lot of divisions, and they will have a lot of kind of distrust from the people, especially from the people who had the experience or had the memories that before 2001, when the Afghan Taliban's very conservative or even some kind of the very aggressive policies towards the females, towards the education, towards the minority groups, towards the other religious groups. So this is a very negative memory. So that is why if the Afghan Taliban want to turn this kind of the very negative memories to the better and the positive prospect of their new government, they have to change. And not only change the government, not only means that the government with the face of the very inclusive manner, but also to try to implement the policies of the inclusive policies, the very open policies, and try to bring everybody inside the decision-making circles and to represent the interests of all the Afghan people, but not just the religious or very conservative groups. So I think they will have a lot of difficulties. They will have a lot of difficult tasks to handle with. But I will always say, as we say, the good luck, because always the formation of the new government means a very new beginning that might give a lot of hope and prospect for the future.
All right, Professor Wang Jin, thank you for those insights and perspectives. I was speaking to Professor Wang Jin he's a specialist in Middle Eastern Studies and China's Northwest University. Now let's go live to our correspondent Smayale Abbasin in Kabul. Abbasin, you just heard the press conference there. A few government ministers were announced. The full cabinet is still yet to come. Tell us more about the ministers announced today.
Hello. Well, the cabinet, which will be caretaker of the system according to Zabihullah Mujahid, will be starting their task from tomorrow. And the cabinet members will all of the Taliban senior leadership, and their structure is like there is a leader of the cabinet, and he will have two deputies, Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar and Maulavi Hanafi, and the leader would be Maulavi Muhammad Hassan, and the rest of the cabinet, which lead to 20 plus members of the Taliban. This is the whole structure. One point to be noted, there was no structure, no ministry and institution announced for the women affairs. And the third issue is about the inclusiveness. Zabihullah Mujahid justified is that our members or belong to every tribe and ethnic of Afghanistan, and we represent all the Afghanistan. So this is inclusive government and inclusive cabinet for the short term, which will be taking care of the affairs because of the vacuum that is already erupting in the country and all over the institution of the country. So they will be starting their task from tomorrow on, and according to Zabihullah Mujahid, that was a necessary step for a short term, and we will go beyond when we are ready, and we will announce the formal and full-fledged cabinet when the time reach. Now, there would be reaction from the international community in the region that, is it inclusive? Obviously, they will have different reaction in this regard. Zabihullah Mujahid mentioned these issues and the presser, and also it is also raising questions whether it's inclusive or not.
Now, you talked about inclusive. What do you think? You've been following this story very carefully. What message is the Taliban sending to the world?
Well, the Taliban send a message, according to Zabihullah Mujahid, for the inclusiveness and the necessary for formation of the caretaking cabinet. So this was finally the result of all the consultations and meetings and everything that the Taliban have been doing in Kabul, Kandahar, and also in their political office in Doha. But obviously, the international community will have questions about this. And the cabinet, which all members of the cabinet or belong to the Taliban ranks and their leadership, is something that would raise questions in regard to the formation of the new government. But Zabihullah Mujahid said, we have been in meetings and discussions in this regard with international society, with different countries, and we have assured them, and we are again assuring them, that this cabinet will be inclusive. He also justified the just announced cabinet, the Take Care cabinet, as inclusive, because he said all of the members that we appoint belong to every tribe and they have made sacrifices. That's why they have the right to rule the country. And according to Zabihullah Mujahid, the word might be different, but the context of his speech was, this is what we see as inclusive because this is better for the country, for a centralized government and taking care of the issues that coming to the country. He also emphasized to some other issues like traveling through the Kabul airport and the rest of the country, and normalization of the flights in the country. Also the protests that held today and the recent days, and he was justifying different angle of those protesters and the reaction from the Taliban. He said we have not well-trained forces for the management of the protests and rallies in the country. So no one should be allowed to step up for protests and rallies in the country, and they should wait, and we will listen their voice. According to the women, he said that we also know the rights of the women, and we will form the regulation and everything accordingly. So there are much more points related to the issue. And what about all those former government officials? They are now not part of the cabinet. Mujahid justifies this as, we are not going to share the power with anyone because we know what's best for the country, and we want a centralized system and one command, and everybody should also follow the commands. And that's why and how they will go on, and that is finally the short term or the caretaker cabinet that the Taliban announced.
All right, let's leave it there for now. Abbasin Samayale Abbasin in Kabul. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has been holding talks with Qatari officials aimed at speeding up evacuations. Our correspondent John Terrett joins me now, live from New York. John, what's the latest from the talks?
Well, Gas, I think you have to think of it like this. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is in the region, in Doha, Qatar now, essentially on a charm offensive. He's essentially there to say thank you to all the Qatari officials and everybody else that he will meet in officialdom on this trip, to say thank you for helping the US to get 120,000 people out of Kabul airport before the US left just over a week ago. But his visit comes as 3 or 4 key things have happened on the international stage. First of them over the weekend, the Taliban claiming victory in Panjshir Valley, which had been the last holdout against them. Now, as we've just been hearing, the Taliban in Kabul announcing a caretaker government and some cabinet positions. It is not clear here in America whether this is the inclusive government that the Taliban has been promising all along or not. On top of that, in America, it is being reported that there is a hostage situation going on in the northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif, where there are 6 planes on the ground, according to the Associated Press, and the Taliban is refusing to let people leave. On top of that, 4 Americans have left Afghanistan in the last 24 hours. They went over land, we are told. It has been reported here that it was nothing to do with the State Department, it was a private initiative. So what has Antony Blinken been saying? Well, first of all, he has said that the Taliban is not blocking people with exit visas and passports who wish to leave the country. He said explicitly, this is not a hostage crisis. He said the US has identified a small number of people in Mazar-e-Sharif in the north who wish to leave the country. The Secretary of State will move on next to Ramstein Air Base, the hub of the evacuation in Germany, where he'll meet with the German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas and take part in a virtual conference with 20 countries who have an interest in Afghanistan. Also in the region, the Secretary for Defense, Lloyd Austin, visiting Qatar as well, the UAE, Saudi, Bahrain and Kuwait. The difficulty these 2 men have is a perceived lack of credibility now for the pullout and the way it was handled, and the sense in the region that the US is really pulling back from there in total after 20 years, whether that is true or not. Gaz.
All right, John, thank you for that. John Tarrant in New York. Now let's get the headlines across Europe. Nabi?
Thanks, Gaz. The European Commission has asked Europe's top court to impose a daily fine on Poland until it complies with an earlier order to suspend a new disciplinary procedure for judges. It comes amid EU concerns about the independence of Poland's judiciary. Penelope Lersch is following the story and joins us live now. Penelope, just tell the viewers a bit about the background behind this issue and why has this decision been imposed now?
Well, this is a very long-running and complicated dispute between Brussels and Warsaw. They've come to blows over many different issues regarding rule of law and the values of the European Union being upheld in Poland, but particularly issues around judicial independence. One that has taken centre stage lately is this disciplinary chamber for judges, which the EU